Joining us now to discuss Secretary of State Marco Rubio praising Vice President JD Vance as a strong candidate for the 2028 presidential election is Republican strategist and political analyst Matt Klink, and Mike Leon, Director of Strategy, Free and Equal Elections Foundation, and host of Can We Please Talk podcast. So good afternoon to you both. Matt, I'll start with you today. What were your first reactions, hearing Rubio praising Vance for 2028?
Well, look, it's a smart move by the Secretary of State, who clearly has demonstrated his desire to be president. Case in point, he ran initially in 2016. But I think right now, 3 years out from the 2028 election, I think it's the smart move to keep things friendly in the Trump-Vance administration. And he and JD Vance are apparently very close friends. So, again, it's a good call. I think right now the so-called dream ticket, again, 3 years out. So with that caveat would be a JD Vance Marco Rubio ticket, but it's still early, and Marco Rubio may yet throw his hat into the ring at some point.
Okay, Mike, I'm curious as to what you think as well.
Yeah, first of all, good to see everybody. Matt's right about 3 years out. He said it numerous times because it's so early. It's 3 years out, right? Like voter attention span and what happens with the administration and the midterm elections. There's so many different variables at play. There was a YouGov poll that showed JD Vance had a 51% unfavorability rating right now. So, and again, that's a small sample size and that's a snapshot in time, but who knows how people are going to feel in the next 18 months as we get to the midterm elections, as we get to the next 3 years. So there's a reason why Matt kept repeating 3 years from now, and it's still early. But I agree. Marco Rubio may throw his hat in the ring. As Secretary of State, as somebody who's Latino and that growing population of folks that are 62.1 million, voters in that eligible block. So I think it's smart of him to do that while also maybe keeping the door open for a presidential bid for himself in 2028.
Matt, do you think there's actually a risk to starting too early, perhaps burning out media attention too soon?
For the Republicans, no. And you know what? Even for the Democrats, you're already seeing people start to make some waves. So you saw Rahm Emanuel go on Megyn Kelly and sound like a hardcore moderate, talking about, men should not be competing in women's sports and, all of the hot button social issues that have been the millstone around the Democratic Party's necks. So you're starting to see some of it, and I think you're going to see more and more of it. Steve Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, was out making some statements earlier. AOC clearly thinks that her lane is going to be to run from the left, and she's been out touring with Bernie Sanders on her End Oligarchy tour. So there are people on the Dem side making waves, and right now, I don't think any Republican wants to step on Donald Trump's messaging, but you are seeing JD Vance being a pretty aggressive vice president, going out to events that are gaining quite a bit of publicity. For example, the fundraiser that he just did in Massachusetts. So again, it's never too early to start, at least for a little tinkering around the edges.
So, Mike, it is 3.5 years out, but, for me personally, at least, it's still fun to talk about these things. So let me ask you, President Trump suggested that both Rubio and Vance could be successors to the Make America Great Again movement. What do you think about that? To what degree do you think Rubio and Vance might differ on that in style or policy?
Yeah, and well, first off, just to piggyback on what Matt said, it's never too early to saturate, right? I'm in the content space, so you got to feed the machine. So there is no, there is no wrong answer in terms of going on and doing these interviews and having that content live in perpetuity out there. But in terms of how these guys would differ from Donald Trump, we've seen some stark differences. If you just go back to the 2015 going into 2016 primaries of how Marco Rubio would handle some things differently than Donald Trump. But obviously, we know that he's very staunch on, Vladimir Putin is a dictator, and he would be maybe a little bit more of a hard negotiator with respect to global politics and how he's already treated Russia and China as his lens sitting on the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Senate. JD Vance, again, I'm very curious as to what JD Vance's, some of his policies would look like. I mean, right now they have to fall in line with the president. Do they think tariffs are a good negotiating strategy? Do they piggyback on that? There's so many different variables, Don. Like we truly need to see what the One Big Beautiful Bill's impact will be in 27 and beyond. And we need to see what happens in the midterm elections in 26 before we can actually get a true read on if either of these guys will differ from what worked versus what didn't work. And yeah, it's great to talk about it now. And it's great, like I said, like Matt just said about the Democrats going out there and going and doing media that is potentially, something that they're opposed to, like a Megyn Kelly and Rahm Emanuel probably wouldn't sit down for a conversation. But you should be having these conversations. You should go out there and do these things. But we really don't know what these guys will differ from policy-wise. Kamala Harris tried to distance herself from some of the Biden things, and people were like, well, why didn't you mention that when you were vice president, right? So those are some of the things that I think JD Vance would have to get ahead of if 26 and 27 don't go the way the Republicans want. This episode of Can We Please Talk is presented by our friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Delicious tasting coffee since 2009. They've been our proud sponsor. You see the promo code there. Look at this. They sent me this beautiful kit right here. Listen to that. Listen to that seal coming out, right? What's in it? Environmentally safe, compostable K-Pods. I love the dark Mexican blend. You can go to their website right now, take the quiz. That quiz is going to put you with a flavor profile. Listen to that sound of the coffee that you're going to be matched up with. Go to freshroastedcoffee.com. Click the link right now in our show notes. You can see it right there. Click that link. It's going to take you to the site. When you get to checkout, use our promo code, Can We Please Get 20, all one word, Can We Please Get 20, 20. You're going to get 20% off your first purchase. Head to freshroastedcoffee.com, our official sponsor of the Can We Please Talk podcast.
So, Matt, anything to build on in terms of successors for MAGA?
I think it's fair to say that no one is going to get a free ride, that even if Trump is popular in 2027, that if JD Vance is the heir apparent, he's not, people are not just going to get out of his way and say, okay, JD, it's your turn now. Somebody will offer the Republican alternative, whether it's a Ron DeSantis or a Nikki Haley or a Marco Rubio or a Mike Pompeo. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And look, with the Democrats, we know that the Democratic primary in 2028 is going to be a wide open affair where the progressives will be competing with the moderates. And it's as it should be. That, a healthy competition in the primaries is a sign of a robust democracy. So every American, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you should want a lot of candidates in the race, and they'll let the best ideas find their way to the top.
Okay, Mike, a new college Emerson poll has Vance in the lead over three potential Democratic candidates. That's Governor Newsom, AOC, and former Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. So, Mike, what do you think about that poll?
Yeah, again, 3 years early, right, Don? But I mean, but there are some things in that poll that you can take away from that. Like first, back to Matt's overall point about going to do media. Pete Buttigieg was just on The Breakfast Club, right? A popular hip hop morning show that's syndicated nationally, right? And so you see Democrats are starting to do these non-traditional, media things, and everyone raves about Pete's media style, but he's only been a mayor as his highest qualification. Obviously, he was the Secretary of Department of Transportation. AOC has only been in the House of Representatives, right? What would be her path to being president? Although we did nominate a junior senator, obviously once upon a time, who ended up becoming president back in 2008. So it's a wide open field, and I think to Matt's point, I want more competition. I want more names to be in there. I truly think amongst all those folks that were in the poll against JD Vance on the Democratic side, I think that there's somebody else that will emerge from that. We're seeing Josh Shapiro right here on our screen. We haven't even mentioned him, and he's the governor of a big swing state, right? Gretchen Whitmer's on our screen right now too, as well, and she's won an election twice there in Michigan, another swing state. So there's a lot of candidates right now. I think it would make sense that JD Vance is slightly ahead of some of those folks because they've been in the news. Gavin Newsom, obviously, with the LA stuff and with respect to some of his battles with Trump early on in the administration in these first 6 months. So it would make sense that he's ahead by a small margin and against some of those candidates. But I truly think we don't have the Democratic challenger just yet to what would be in 2028.
Matt, can I get your reaction on one point that Mike mentioned earlier? And that is the balance that potential candidates need to strike, especially when President Trump still in office?
Well, first of all, if you're a Republican, you want to adhere as closely as possible to the Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment is to thou shalt do no harm to another Republican candidate, especially Donald Trump, because he is somewhat unpredictable and you never know if you do something that he doesn't like, he will respond back quickly and harshly. For Democrats, they're in somewhat of a bit of a pickle because the group of Democrats that largely determine who the nominee will be skew more liberal than the rest of America. So you have to run to the left in the primary election and then run back to the middle in a general election. And you can't pursue a general election strategy in the primary. So it really is a case of threading the needle for the Democrats. And then returning back quickly to the Republicans, what Mike said earlier, it's let's look at the overall impact of the one big beautiful bill. Let's look at the state of the economy. How do the Republicans fare in the midterm elections? If the Republicans still keep both houses of Congress, I think that people are going to want to try to say that they want to continue the Trump legacy as long as possible. But if the Republicans lose the House, which, if history is any judge, is a heck of a lot likelier than the Senate, then I think that you're going to have more open Republicans, notably challenging what they see as shortcomings in the Trump administration. But again, long way between now and then. And right now, for the Republicans, it's cuddle up and make nice to Donald Trump because things are going pretty well.
Okay, Mike, so I understand you actually covered Democratic frontrunners on the last episode of your podcast. Maybe you can go a bit more in depth on that. Talk to us about it. What is the Democratic strategy?
Yeah, so first of all, appreciate you. New episodes can please talk out every Monday. And Matt will know this name, Chuck Rocha, who's the Democratic strategist that was co-hosting with me, who's Bernie Sanders' advisor. And we got into this, right? We talked about the way that you message to voters out there, and we specifically talked around Latino voters and some of the missteps and mishappenings of the Democratic Party and kind of the faking the funk. But we started it all with the basic premise, Don. You need a candidate, right? You need a candidate right now. And I just don't think of the pool of candidates that the Democrats have right now that they can recycle out there. I just don't think any of them have truly emerged to that front runner lane. Now, again, back to Matt's overarching point and to the point of this whole segment. It's 3 years from now, right? Like right now, the House, and I also had a member of the House on the show in the second segment, where they were talking about how do you fight back against some of Trump's things in the fall? How do you stay on the Epstein file stuff? So no one's really looking at 26 and what the actual message will be to take out. Everyone right now is kind of focused on these town halls. We're going to have to talk about the one big beautiful bill. We're going to have to talk about how it impacts you and trying to drive up support. But as we get into 2026, then we truly start these ground campaigns and things like that. So I just think at the overarching set of this, Don, the Democrats just don't have that candidate. I think any poll that you show right now to anybody, if you give them those same choices like you gave me of the Gavin Newsoms, the AOCs, I think people will roll their eyes at some of those things, right? We've tried that, or we've done that, or this person actually doesn't want to jump into it. It would have been nice to have seen, before Kamala Harris got named the nominee, a contested convention, and then we could have actually seen somebody come out of the fray that they could actually say, hey, I have the battle scars to prove that I went through this. And that's why Matt's point, earlier about the 2028 Democratic primary will be interesting, because then we'll truly see maybe 12, 13 people on stage, and somebody will truly emerge from all those debates and start to gather this public support around that.
Okay, Matt, you get the final word. Is there a clear, tangible strategy for Democrats right now?
The strategy right now is to get as many different perspectives out there as possible and let the candidates who can most successfully carry her or his vision rise to the top. And the only way you do that is by going out, getting bloodied and recovering and moving forward with your agenda. That, as Mike said, that would have been the advantage for a Democratic candidate going into the 2024 election. But when you just nominate someone who hasn't been through the ringer, they don't have the experience to get out there. They haven't been beaten up by their own side, much less from the Republicans. So you don't know how they're going to react. That's what this time is for. This is kind of like the preseason before we get into the regular season. You want them to go out. If you're going to make a mistake early and learn from it so that you're a better candidate when the hardcore electioneering starts in 2027. And then the postseason comes in 2028 when you're going for the world championship.
Hey, everybody, Mike Leon from the Can We Please Talk podcast. Thank you so much for watching this clip. Do me a favor, hit subscribe. Gonna get more content from us over at Can We Please Talk.